right, we need to bring this meeting to order. Thank you all for coming on this snowy night. Andrew and Karen are going to join us at 4:30. They're finishing up a few things at the office. But we have a couple of agencies here, or actually we have Mount Washington Airport. And we had some questions last year. Karen also said that she will provide us with a copy of the contract when she comes here so we can take a look at that. So if you would like to join us up here and present. Oh, thank you.
Come ahead.
Yeah, one of you can, I'll go over there.
I've got, that's not right.
Are you sure? Yeah, right there.
Oh, we're not gonna sit.
Yeah, we're gonna bring it up.
That's fine.
We'll just bring up, oh, she's got that.
I can bring it on.
There's 8.
Okay.
I can see.
See, we're advertising for president this year. Every opportunity.
Figures. He's here in spirit.
Barely, well, if you listen to
Right.
them, you probably can actually hear them, but anyway.
I agreed.
Okay. All right.
If you would introduce yourselves.
Sure.
And
So my name is Jay Ennis. I'm the chairman of the Airport Commission.
Wendy Roberts, I am the treasurer and secretary.
And Dayton Gowdy, I'm Littleton's representative to the Airport Commission.
And I'm Lynn Tover, and I'm an at-large member. Doesn't have anything to do with my size. Just
The last name,
wanted to
Lynn?
say that Tover.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
Cool.
sorry.
Right.
No T on the end.
All right, so I didn't put together much in the way of the presentation for this, but I'll just add a little bit for a few minutes and try to address some of the questions that Diane shared with me via email. So first of all, just so that we're all on the same page, the reason that we're here today even talking to you is that the relationship between the airport and Littleton is through an agreement that Littleton was participated in, what year?
2010, and it was adopted by the town.
2010, adopted by warrant article, I guess.
Yes.
And it's called an intermunicipal agreement. That's the same thing that several other towns are part of. Basically, it allows the towns to join together in supporting and governing the airport. And one of the provisions for that is that when the airport creates its budget and goes through all of its other sources of income, there is a difference. There can be a difference between the budget for the airport and what it costs in total to run the airport. And the intermunicipal agreement allows the airport the ability to appropriate the balance of that, which we try to keep as small as possible, from the different member towns and a portion on a per capita basis between them. Everyone here is familiar with the intermunicipal agreement? Nothing's new about that? It was certainly new to me when I joined the commission.
We aren't as much as we would like
Do you want me
to.
to do
And I
this?
think
Yeah, please.
tonight we're going to get a copy of that. So
I
We actually
have
brought copies for you.
oh, great, that would be
So
great.
if you'd like to take one and pass it
Send
down.
back to Ed.
So-
Thank you.
The agreement is based as a statutory creation that allows towns to band together for different purposes. It's RSA 53A. So the history of the airport is the airport has been a multi-town airport for many years. There was an agreement prior to this one. There was some issues with it. So in 2010, the commission sought out legal advice, and it was basically redrafted to meet statutory compliance. And this is what was resulted. It was put on different towns' warrants that year, and there were actually 7 towns that adopted it. 2 towns have, 1 town withdrew and 1 town is not participating because they refused to contribute their share of the appropriation that the towns are required to shortfall.
Which town is that?
The town that won't pay?
Yeah.
Franconia.
What are the consequences of not contributing?
Well,
Member of the commission.
I'm sorry?
You have no participation on the
But
committee.
Well, that's sort of, I mean, so the consequences of not paying are sort of twofold. The first thing is the commission can actually, not that we've ever done this, or I don't think we would plan to do this, but if a particular year where you have not withdrawn from the association, and you don't contribute, you can be sued. I'm sorry?
What?
You can be sued.
You can be
You can be
sued,
sued.
yes, for enforcement. The commission's never done that. I'm not suggesting that we would do that, but
So
that is,
you're saying this is a signed binding agreement?
yes.
There's no signatures on here.
Okay, this was adopted, you don't, so let me back up. It's not signed because there isn't anybody to sign it. It was adopted at town meeting. So it was done through,
Taxpayers
the
voted.
taxpayers voted this in 2010.
Yeah, the original agreement was probably signed.
I don't think so. The first one was like 2002.
Yeah.
But this was reorganized it.
was selectmen.
Have you got a copy of what the town people that
That's it.
said? The exact wording is in here for the warrant?
Yes, that agreement was circulated to all of the different towns. It was put on the warrant, and the town of Littleton, I don't have the warrant
I
article.
want to see how the wording was on the warrant article. Because I don't know if it was for 1 year or for a lifetime
It's
or
for
what it was
lifetime.
for.
How
How can it be for a lifetime?
Because once you entered into the intermunicipal agreement, you're part of the agreement. It
No,
was,
I gotta see that warrant article. Can we?
We can get that.
Yeah, we need a copy of that warrant article.
So that
I
was
can't believe that.
2010?
yes.
That's kind of on our half anyway. I mean, obviously, we have that in our own.
Right. It was registered with the Attorney General's office. I do have I didn't bring it with me because I didn't realize this was going to be an issue, but this agreement was registered with the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State.
But you've already had 3 towns pull out of it.
No.
Did you sue those 3 towns?
Okay, we've had one town pull out.
Yeah, and 2 withdraw.
No. One town withdrew, and Franconia has not paid.
And who was,
So there's only 2 towns?
Jefferson
There's
withdrew.
only 2 towns.
Jefferson
So you
withdrew,
got 5 towns now contributing to this?
correct.
What are the 5 towns?
Littleton, Lancaster, Whitefield, Sugar Hill, and Dalton.
Sugar Hill and Dalton give you money for this program every
They
year?
do,
Yes, they do.
Jefferson withdrew by town vote,
they do.
town voted against it.
They had voted it in, my understanding was before my time, but my understanding is that the commissioner from the town of Jefferson had issues prior to the current commission with the way budgeting was done and recommended to the town to withdraw, and they followed his lead.
My understanding has always been that you simply, if you don't pay your assessment, you may be removed from
You
having a
can,
commission.
there is a provision in,
And if you don't
and
pay it the second year, you shall be removed from commission.
I don't
My
believe
understa-
I don't believe that's what the agreement says,
Yeah, that's exactly what it says.
does it?
Paragraph 6. Termination of a member town for failure to share the expenses. So the first year it may be terminated, the second year it shall be terminated.
However,
But that's not really the point.
Yeah. Well-
I'm a supporter of the airport, always have been. The frustration is just, I think what you hear here is that the towns, and some of the towns that are the primary beneficiaries aren't contributing. And that's the frustration.
so part of this, I think, is a follow-up from last year.
Sure.
And part of it is, we want to know how you are tracking your fees. We do not mind basically contributing, but we don't want to contribute any more than we have to. And part of it was, how do you collect the fees? You were having a difficult time monitoring those that landed, coming in and getting a fee from them. So if you can explain what changes have happened in the last year for that particular area.
Sure. So just let me run down the sources of income that we have for our operating budget. So the number one is the land rental that hangars are built on. So private owners build hangars, but they have to rent the land from the airport. The airport collects land rent in the amount of about $7,675 a year, I think was the number from the budget.
How many hangars do you have on site?
Well,
Thank you.
I mean, this is our draft budget. Again, under the IMA, we're required to do a budget, we're required to have a public hearing, which we had a couple of weeks ago. We can't actually adopt the budget as a commission for, I think, 25 days from the time of our public hearing. So it's not adopted at this point because we haven't had enough time elapsed between the public hearing and that. But this is what we're working off if everybody wants to see where we are in terms of financially and what we're looking at moving forward. And those revenues are detailed in that as well, so that might help.
So the number of hangars are detailed here in the...
No, they are not. There's just a total of what the land rent is.
Okay, but do you know how many hangars are on site?
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's 12. One, two, three, four, five.
And if additional people build hangars, that's
Yes.
more land for the airport.
And so is there like a square footage, based on the footprint that they're assessed, but it's equal per square foot or
So
per acre?
the leases have been generated over many years because some of the hangars that are out there are original hangars from when the airport was first built. Because they're land rentals with buildings on them, they are lengthy leases, generally 50 years or more. Some of the older leases are still not quite where they should be in terms of rental fees, but because they're a contract, we can't really change that now. As new leases are coming up, we have created a standardized format, and I actually called 37 airports around the region to get comparable rates, and we are now charging land leases that for any improved area, the per square foot cost is 16.5 cents, and the unimproved cost is 3 cents a foot.
You mean, not the cost, but the lease amount?
The lease amount.
Is that per month, per year?
Per year.
Per year, okay.
It's an annual lease amount, which is right in line with other airports of our size. And the leases, the FAA and New Hampshire DOT, which is sort of our watchdog from the FAA, because we're a block grant state, they require us to be competitive and do fair market in order to keep getting funding for grants to improve the airport and maintain the airport. And just so everybody's clear, this operating budget is literally just operating expenses. It is not any capital improvements. Last year we did a runway remarking and rejuvenation project that was approximately $292,000. You didn't contribute a penny to it. That was all money that was raised. 95% of it comes from the state and federal government, and the other 5%, the commission has been working on raising revenues, getting resources and other things to make that 5%
Actually, just to be
match.
clear, part that comes from the federal government comes through fuel taxes. So anybody who purchases fuel to go into a piston aircraft, about $1 of every gallon they purchase is going into that fund. And so that is redistributed back out to the airports, and this is our portion of it.
Right. And the town of Whitefield primarily contributes to that operating cost. Their IMA share, they always contribute higher than what their IMA share is, and we are setting that aside for the airport's match to the 95% for any major project that we have to continue to do to operate the airport safely.
Do you try to go back to the towns every year to get them to participate, or do you just?
We have. Last year, we went back to Jefferson and we actually sought out Twin Mountain. We thought we were going to get Twin Mountain, and at the meeting, actually Dave Ernsberger had gone to that meeting, along with Jay McCusker, who's one of the other commission members. It looked good, and then at the last minute, they said no. Which is very frustrating because we understand the frustration of the towns, because certainly the Mount Washington Hotel is most definitely a beneficiary of the airport.
They're probably one of the primary beneficiaries.
Yeah.
They do benefit significantly. I mean, there's no disputing that a lot of people who fly and go and stay at the Mount Washington, but at the same time, a lot of those people who stay at the Mount Washington visit the other towns as well.
Yeah.
And I will say, unequivocally, it's very frustrating to us because even with their IMA share with their population is so low that it would be, it's really a minor amount of money. I mean, the way it really works out is it's $1.41 per person for who's currently in the IMA, and if we had more member towns, that $1.41 per person would go down. But we have sought out, we have reached out to other towns to try to join. We just have not, at this point, been successful. I think Twin Mountain had their police department plan last year, which I think tipped a lot of people. I think, from what I understand, it lost by something like 20 votes. They wanted to spend a couple $1 million to build a new fire station, police department, town hall complex.
Can you actually approach the Mount Washington Consortium, the hotel, and not
We
just
have.
go through towns?
Yeah.
You have?
The Omni has been, the Omni's management keeps changing. John Santarello, who had been the GM for a period of time, was very favorable to the airport. I think he lasted less than a year. So trying to getting into talk to somebody has been a challenge. I can tell you the director of their marketing department, Craig Clemmer, is just not interested. He flat out said to me, when your runway gets to be 5,000 feet, come talk to me. And we're 4,001 feet. So if anybody has an inroad, we're happy to help assistance. I'm sorry.
In your spread of income, is that fairly typical percentage-wise, fuel sales, hangar, airport fees of an airport this size, or can you compare airports like this? Is it like
We
comparing
can
firstborn
compare
to
airports
firstborn?
like this. And one thing that's a little bit different than most airports is most airports don't own their fuel systems. Usually they have what's called an FBO, which is a business at the airport, and it's the business at the airport that runs the fuel farm and the fuel sales, so that's slightly different. The one thing that's similar though is that instead of, like where we collect the fuel sales directly, the FBO would pay a portion of the income to the airport. So it's not markedly different, except that we probably generate more income as a result of fuel sales because we don't have that middleman.
And
to collect from.
and what you have is fuel sales, that's the income from the fuel, or is that gross sales?
That is gross sales, and you'll see the fees, there's the gross sales, and then there's the cost next to
So
it.
Oh,
the number you're probably
information
looking
fees,
for.
yeah.
Yeah.
The number 2 contributor to our operating income is our fuel sales. And we think about 55 cents out of every gallon that we sell is coming back to the airport as income. We price ourselves so that we're price elastic. We're trying to get it so that we're not cheap and we're not expensive. We're maximizing the number of gallons we sell and we're bringing in the most money to the airport. So that represents about 13,000 gallons of fuel sold so far this year for about $7,150. So that's our second.
Because that encourages visiting aircraft to fill up here and not elsewhere.
Absolutely, but it also encourages aircraft to just come here in the first place.
Really?
I'm a pilot myself, and pilots seek out airports that have reasonable fuel prices. And they avoid ones that have exorbitant prices.
May I ask you about your airport fees? What are those?
So,
These questions we ask are just for education purposes.
No, absolutely.
That's totally fine.
so the third source of fees, or third source of income that we have is our landing and parking fees.
Uh-huh.
And we have some fairly typical fee structures in that we charge more for commercial or Part 135 aircraft, so aircraft that are bringing people for hire to our airport. So when a commercial plane lands, then based on their weight, if they're under 12,500 pounds, it's $75. If they are over 12,500 pounds, it's $140 for landing on the runway. And then second, if a plane parks overnight, an aircraft with a single engine non-commercial is charged $10. If it's a twin engine non-commercial, it's $15. And if it is a commercial plane of any type, it's $65.
The commercial refers to the ones that are hired out.
Yes.
Like a family would hire a private jet to visit the Mount Washington.
Exactly.
Correct.
Or the mountain.
Or, actually, and we see this quite a bit, a business executive who has some business going on up here does not want to get in a car for 3 hours to come from Manchester,
Right.
and instead lands at the airport and comes to visit that business. Quite a bit of the commercial traffic is that.
What is your biggest market? What's your
Tourism,
We believe it's tourism.
tourism?
tourism,
Private planes?
yes.
Well, are we saying in terms of dollars? In terms of numbers, it's private planes.
Dollars.
In terms of dollars, it's commercial.
That makes
the
sense.
commercial
That makes
planes.
sense. And do you have marketing on your I.C. marketing, $1,500.
Correct.
Is all your labor donated? Is it all volunteer?
The commission does all of it.
Oh, the commission does
The
that?
commission is doing
How many,
everything.
five commissioners?
No, we have 10 at this point.
10?
Each member town has a commissioner appointed. Whitefield has an extra selectman, and then there are an additional 4 commissioners at large.
Can I, just a general question, do you keep statistics as far as a breakdown of commercial and private landings per year and where these are based? Or in other words, like say, is it someone from the North Haverhill Airport, going out for a Saturday or Sunday spin and they land at Whitefield, fill up, and then, go back and do this maybe 4 or 5 times, during the foliage season?
Why don't you start on that?
Or do you have, just to get a sense of,
Sure.
of the use and the reach? Because I know New Hampshire has typically been a user fee state, where if you're using the facility or the service, we want you to pay for it and not on someone else's dime. So if we could get a sense of those statistics and how they compare from maybe one year to the next, I think it would just get some education for the people and the voters to see, what their money's going for and how far of an impact it's having.
Okay, so it's not an easy answer, and it's probably not going to be an answer that everybody is super happy with. And it's difficult for us to maintain statistics, primarily because we have such a small budget. We have no one who is manned. The airport is not manned. There's no one staffing it. There's nobody there to collect fees. There's nobody there to, make observations. We did put in a camera system last year, which has been helpful, but it is very labor intensive. I can tell you that I primarily do most of the administrative work.
So is it the honor system as far as fee collection if no
Not
one's there,
exactly.
or there is
Not
some
exactly.
enforcement?
So,
Okay.
yeah, so in terms of statistics of who's landing and taking off, like I said, it's very labor intensive, because the way that we do it is, Jay has written some software, and he can get more into that tracks planes through transponders and flight services. We also have the camera system, which is a manual system. Like, I literally have to go through every picture, every email, and then if I can see the tail number, go to the FAA registry, look up the tail number, find out where the plane flew from, and then track it that way. With all due respect, I have a full-time job. I work probably 50 to 60 hours a week at my regular job, and I donate probably 15 to 20 hours a week to the airport.
But she doesn't sleep, so that helps.
Yeah.
So, on top of doing a lot of other things besides the camera system, I'm not only doing all the bookkeeping, I do all the paperwork for FAA, I just don't have the amount of time it would take to do that. And the problem is, we also recognize is we don't have the budget to hire somebody to do it. So I try as best I can to kind of keep an eye on things when things are going on, and I do, the camera's motion censored, so I do get hits to my phone, and I get alerts, so I can kind of get an idea, but I am going to tell you, I do not spend, 3 hours a day doing this every day to try to monitor it. When like some of the larger planes, like the corporate planes come in, I will try to look those up, because I know those are a good fee source for us. But the planes that are just landing for the day and taking off are less so. The ones that we're trying to focus more on, the ones that we're going to collect a fee from.
But proxy for that is fuel sales.
Right, so we also have a fuel sales, and unfortunately I don't have those numbers tonight. I just wasn't able to get that done in time to do this. Last year, Lynn and I sat for, 3 hours going through cameras and the fuel sales. And I can tell you in 2017, from what we were able to track, there were 95 cities and towns represented, 26 states and 3 countries. So we do get quite a reach, and we were sort of surprised by how far people were coming from. We have planes from California and Washington State that came in. So there certainly is like some impetus for people to come here. We do, and I spend a fair amount of time at the airport too, just doing paperwork and filing and stuff like that. And while I'm there, I wind up meeting lots of people, and I'm always chatting with people to try to learn where they're going, what they're doing, so I can give some information to the town.
Yeah.
And I can say that like most of the larger planes are coming to Littleton. And most of them are either, like spending time with them at Washington. The other thing that happened this year, which has been a great boost for us, is North Country Ford has agreed to provide rental car service to the airport, which has been our biggest hurdle. The big problem with the airport has been for years is that you can fly into the airport and there you are. But
You can take off.
you can't go anywhere else. But now with North Country Ford doing rental car service, there's a way for people to get off of the airport. And this is like big news to me. Uber has arrived. Literally, yeah. We have one person right now.
The biggest issue for pilots.
We have one person now, and the way I found this out is I was out there dealing with something else, and a plane flew in, and this lovely elderly couple got off, and they said they were going to the Sugar Hill Inn. I was like, it's nice, and I'm like, how are you getting there? I'm like, oh, we're Ubering. I'm like, what? And sure enough, a woman showed up, and she's now an Uber driver. So their Uber is reaching out, and that will certainly be a big boost to the airport. Because I can tell you, when the corporate flights fly in, a lot of times, if it's like a meeting for a business meeting, and again, those people are coming to Littleton. But the pilots will come in and they're always looking for a way to go out for breakfast or lunch while they're sitting around and waiting. And I can tell you, I've literally driven them to different places when I happen to be there. But having Uber, they're going to be, and for the most part, people like, where should we go? And I'm always giving people like restaurants and places in Littleton to come because, you know, in Whitefield, you've got the Mountain View and Grandma's, and that's it.
And that has been a problem, because I've had people that flew into Lebanon instead of Whitefield because of the transportation issue.
And so the transportation issue seems to be like, we're starting to really make some inroads there. And that I think will be, like, that will be a huge source for like the other towns, because when people get here, almost universally, they want to come to Littleton, because like, as everybody knows, Littleton's kind of like the mecca for this area.
We haven't been to the candy counter, you haven't been to the market.
So,
Shillings.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah.
Except they're always a little nervous about the drinking thing, that's what I've learned.
so
Thank you.
what are some of the other improvements that you see in your future that you want to attain to draw other pilots here, other landings? What is it that you are looking at?
Well, one of the things that we went after last year, and due to some confusion, I don't think we got it, but I had a meeting with Bino Lamontagne and Molly Kaler, who is with the New Hampshire Economic Development Corporation. So we applied for a Northern Borders grant to get a jet fuel farm and replace our avgas farm. One of the things, I met a pilot this summer, or actually Labor Day weekend, who flew in a really nice Beechcraft Premier, which is like the hottest plane right now for a jet. And he had indicated that having jet fuel, and we've kind of like known this, is having jet fuel will definitely bring more of the smaller jets into the area, and those are going to be some of like the passenger jets that can, you know, seat between like 6 and 10 people. They're not huge, but they're certainly the planes that are the kind of the workhorses of the charter services, like the Citations and those planes.
And it turns out this is sort of an answer for our short runway problem.
Right.
The 4,001-foot runway is a problem for jets that have to bring in all the fuel that they need to depart as well.
Gotcha.
But if they can take on fuel at the airport, they're able to use this as a stopping point otherwise. So.
And I can say, I probably respond to 70% of the phone calls that come into the airport too, and in talking to the different jet pilots, I mean, it's kind of like the question is always us or Berlin, and nobody really wants to fly into Berlin, to be honest. For one, it's the runway, it's fogged in a lot because it's right near the river, but the other thing is it's Berlin. So people are much more.
It's not
Well,
even
it's the
Berlin.
but it's the Berlin airport.
Airport.
But they'd really rather come to us, because for the most part, people who are coming in are coming to Littleton, going to the Mount Washington, going to the Mountain View, going to some of the inns around the area in Bethlehem and Franconia and such. So it's more convenient. The problem is, again, our runway is a little bit short, so having jet fuel will allow them to land by us. So after meeting so the issue with the Northern Borders grant turned out that the committee didn't quite understand the structure of the airport. We didn't write the grant. We had, I don't even know what the organization is, Lynn, help me here. NCIC write the grant. So they weren't clear on what the organization was, so they had an issue with that. We scored really well in terms of what the economic driver would be and the concept of the project. It was the organizational part. So Molly and Bino both encouraged us to reapply this year And actually, after meeting with me, they're like, you should write the grant, you should have somebody else do it, because you know this stuff.
Know it. So why are you limited to 4,100?
It's 4,001. Well, the limitations really have to do with, on one end of our runway is the Pondicherry Wildlife Refuge, and then on the other end of our runway is the road and the marsh.
And right
So you
after-
are limited that way?
Yeah, it's-
Yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, there probably is room to do some extension, but 5,000 feet would be, I mean, if you have enough money, you can do anything, but 5,000 feet is going to be very difficult.
Just a sharp right turn, huh?
And our research into the jets that are being used in charter service found that many of the charter services could come in here with the smaller jets if they just had the fuel.
Actually, if you, I think I have it
So,
with me.
And and you are going, you don't have it now, but you're working to get it.
Yes,
Again.
we're
get
gonna
encouraging signs.
reapply.
And the second piece that fits into that very well is that the National Guard is still interested in setting up a base at the airport. They would build basically an operations building, not a hangar, but for their helicopters to come in and do operations here on a periodic basis. They would be a major user of the jet fuel. And
Which
that
would
would be
be-
providing revenue back into the airport as well.
So, give me a second, I think I still have that. If anybody wants to look at it.
While she's doing that, another thing you're asking about, whether other improvements we're doing to try and improve the traffic to the airport. That same comment about call us back when your airport is when your runway is 5,000 feet was also followed with a comment of, your terminal building doesn't exactly look like the kind of place where I want my high-end customers to be getting out of their jet and stepping into. And so we've actually found an opportunity through one of the local large home improvement businesses in the area to get a grant to do some pretty major remodeling work on the airport terminal building. And hopefully that would be happening next spring.
For our listening audience, would you expand on the advantages of having an airport like this in our community?
Well,
Just gonna ask that.
Actually, I'll start with myself. I'm not from the area. I came to the area because I wanted to get away from the mid-Atlantic area and live in paradise. And I would not have been able to do that and be gainfully employed if I had to be running back and forth to the airport in Manchester, just too far. And so I would not be here. I would not have built the house that I just built up in Dalton.
Because you're a pilot, you're a private pilot,
I
you
am
use your own
a
plane.
I do. Had it not been for this airport. My reason for being on the commission is because I want to make sure that this airport continues to succeed and thrive. But at the same time, I look at the airport as a completely untapped resource for this area. If I was going to be building a business in Littleton, and it's probably going to be one of my several factories that I have to build, I'm looking at how would I get here on a regular basis to oversee my business. It's certainly not going to be driving 2+ hours from Manchester to do it. Having this airport here is, I think, a keystone for being able to have things like the Littleton Industrial Park thrive. At the same time, we're saying that tourism is likely the future for the North Country. And air travel for a sector of the population, one that spends quite a bit of money, is a given. If you don't have it, they're not going to be here very much. So I think that, just between those three things, bringing affluent individuals to the area, helping with, as businesses get a foothold in the area, and enabling tourism, those three things are a benefit to everybody in the North Country.
I want to add something that we didn't mention. It's an infrastructure within the area. You think of transportation in this area. We don't have any trains. There's really not any other option other than flying. And it's a very viable thing. If you look at this study that Wendy is showing you, it's amazing. So when you say, what is it? It's part of our infrastructure that's very important. We got rid of trains. We don't want to get rid of planes.
So part of the grant project for the Northern Borders grant is I undertook a pretty substantial research project about jet aircraft and what could fly here and what uses jet fuel. This is not, I mean, jet's kind of a misnomer, but there are also turboprop planes that use jet fuel. And I mean, I'm like insane, but I literally researched and went through all of the FAA registry, and there's just over 8,000 planes that use jet fuel that can fly to our airport any day of the week, any day of the year, because the runway is big enough. And those are used in the charter service. And the other thing that I learned, which actually I was surprised by, was that the charter service is the only part of aviation that is growing. And if you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense with all of the commercial aircraft security. Last year, the stats here somewhere, air charter service increased in the first half of 2017, 15.8%, which is a pretty astounding number. I think anybody who owns a business that had a 15.8% increase in business would be really happy.
For the United States.
For the United States, yep. And in last year, the top 25 Part 135 operators expanded their charter fleets 5.4% in the first half of the year. And what's happening is more and more people are flying charter because there's been a lot of innovations in the charter service world. For one thing, which I think is hilarious, is there is now an Uber Air. So instead of Uber for cars, they have it for planes. And they're also doing like empty leg seats, which basically means if somebody's chartered a plane from, say, New York City to Mount Washington, and they have 2 empty seats, they put them out for people to buy onto those planes to fill the planes. But they're making it much more accessible for anybody to do charter service and not just the extremely wealthy anymore. And the advantage to charter service really is, number one, you know, if you want to come to New Hampshire to, like, say you want to come to the North Country, you have to fly into Manchester to get there. And then you've got a 2.5-hour ride from the airport to get up here. So if you want to fly, say, from, you know, Washington, D.C., you've got an hour flight, but you got to be at the airport 2 hours before. You fly into Manchester, you get a 2.5-hour ride up, and then by the time you get baggage and all of that stuff. With a charter company, you can go to your little local general aviation airport 10 minutes before you want to get on the plane, get on the little plane, fly your hour and a half up here, get off the little plane, and be, I mean, you can literally be from Washington to the hotel or to Littleton in 2 hours' time. So it's a huge time saving, and that's kind of the big thing now, is everybody, time is a premium, so people are more and more using charter service.
How close are we to taking advantage of that?
Well, one of the things that would really help is the fuel farm, so that's one of the things that we're working on. Stowe Morrisville is a great example for us. So Stowe Morrisville Airport did a renovation a few years ago, and they now have Tradewind Aviation, which is a charter service that flies from Westchester to Stowe twice a week. You can get out of New York City on a bus. They take you up to the Westchester Airport, and you get on a plane, and in like an hour you can be from New York City to Stowe, and their numbers are astounding. That's what kind of got us started on this whole idea, in all honesty. Stowe Morrisville data, they went from having, in 2015 they had 80 operations. In 2017 they expected 638. From January to July they had 372. So they had a 465% increase in just 2 years by renovating their airport and by adding jet fuel. The other thing about jet fuel is it's a huge resource. It's a huge revenue source because on average jet fuel you make about $1 a gallon. I can kind of follow up with Jay about the National Guard also, because I just had a conference call with Deputy Adjutant General Warren Perry last week. I know that this Guard thing has been percolating for a while. We do have a concept that everybody's agreed to, and the Guard is in their process, which unfortunately it's the federal government, so everything takes eons. But they have bypassed, they don't have to do a full environmental assessment. They've got their real estate action plan done. So they're very optimistic, and as of last week, they asked us to start thinking about a lease and a number as a placeholder for when they can build. They expect they wouldn't be able to put a shovel on the ground and actually build for probably 2 years, but they are looking at leasing a space at the airport now, basically. So they want us to get them a number and a lease. So that's gonna help too, and, you know, I don't know exactly when that's gonna occur, because again, it's the federal government, and they've got a million red tape things to go through, but it's all looking very positive. And with having a jet fuel farm, I actually asked them about that too, as one of the concerns is being able to meet our match for the northern borders, because it's a 20% match, not a 5%. And the estimate cost of putting in what we're looking at is about $495,000. So it means we need $100,000 basically to match that. And the Guard burns about 2,000 gallons doing their operations a month in the North Country. So we would make enough money off of the Guard to meet the match on any kind of bond. And then anything after that would just be revenue to the airport.
Well, I think the future is up, going up.
We're working hard at making that. The other thing that we've done is we created a website which is like much more user-friendly, it's more attractive. Again, people in Littleton, if there are things going on, we have an events page, we can add that to us to kind of publicize that to pilots too. Like, we did have a relationship with the Commerce, but they kept just saying, look at our calendar, and frankly, I'm not putting stuff like, you know, we have an Al-Anon meeting this week. I mean, that's not the kind of stuff that we want to be advertising. You know, we're looking for, you know, like when you do the Pollyanna Festival, anything like the major stuff, the Halloween thing. I mean, we can publicize that to like the aviation community as well. We also got 2 really great write-ups at AOPA last year, which is the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association magazine. You would know this better.
That's it, yeah.
There's, I don't know how many
Good write-ups on the
members.
area and-
I don't know how many members there are, a lot.
A lot.
Hundreds of thousands.
I did want to follow up on
Yeah.
your question about how making this a reality
Yes.
with the charter planes coming here. They're already coming here. Tradewinds in particular
Yeah.
has been flying a number of individual flights into this airport, but we're not scheduled. It's a concept of scheduled, unscheduled. It's an FAA term.
It's air taxi service.
And once we have jet fuel, we can make the case with them to start promoting ourselves as more of a scheduled destination. Until we have the jet fuel, I think it's difficult for them to do that.
And that might be a year away. Who knows?
Well, again, you know, the Northern Borders grant round is up in May, and I think we get notified by August. So we wouldn't actually, I think once you get the grant, it takes like a year to build. So it's probably at least 2 years out before we would get the jet fuel in. The other thing that we've been working on, and again, it's part of it's hard because we're 10 people and everybody has like their own lives as well. That you're donating. I mean, we literally are doing everything. I mean, I clean the toilet at the airport at this point. And you know, one of the guys, Jay McCusker, he fixes all of lights for us. Jay Ennis does a lot of like the computer stuff and, you know, just dealing with it. Yeah. I mean, so we're really doing a lot of stuff in-house because of our budget limitations. But one of the things that, you know, in terms of conceptually, we would love to try to tap into some of the ski mountains, like even Loon, because we're still the closest airport. So if you're a private flyer and you want to go to Loon Mountain, we're the best place to land. So, you know, you're 35 minutes from Loon Mountain. And that's what Tradewind is doing. I mean, they're basically feeding Stowe Mountain Lodge. So, you know, we can get like some inroads. And at one point in time, Lincoln actually was a member at the airport and contributed money to the airport. I mean, it was a long time ago, but back when it was kind of like the heyday of aviation. But they certainly could benefit, and you know, they're up and coming. It's just a matter of finding like the time and the people to kind of break into that. And again, if anybody has a contact at Omni Mount Washington, say something.
Before we go, I got a number of questions.
Yeah.
Right now, you only got 5 towns that you're getting funds out of.
Correct.
Okay. One of the towns you mentioned that you do a lot of support to is Bethlehem. But you're not getting funds from Bethlehem, correct?
Not at this time, no.
So there's a whole bunch of towns, maybe a dozen or so in this area, not just the 5 you mentioned, but you're getting very little support from the actual North Country for this airport, as far as towns contributing.
I mean,
And why is that? Why aren't the other towns contributing if this is such a great deal?
I think the airport has gone through a lot of different commissions, some good, some bad. Some have worked hard and some haven't. And all it takes, I think, is for one commission for one period of time to not spend time with the towns promoting the value that the airport has for the area, for the towns to lose sight of that. And once a town backs out, it's, it's a tall order to get them to go back in. So this particular commission has been seated for about 2 years. And we've done amazing things with turning the budget around from where it was before and starting to get the airport back on a much better footing. And I think that we've got a good story that we can take in front of some of the other towns and try to, get them to put this warrant article.
And we heard the same thing last year. How many towns have you added since last year?
None.
So have you been out to these towns and talked to them and try to get your message across to them, or are you just kind of waiting for things to happen?
I've only been on the commission for a few months, but I know that the other commissioners had been out in front of several of the towns, the existing towns last time. I don't know about new towns.
I think maybe that's just something that we would ask you next year when
Yeah.
you come back. What have you done to
Well, we
get
asked them
the
that
other
last year.
towns?
We asked them that last year, and there's no answer.
Well,
I
you know,
think
That's not
last
true,
year-
there was an answer. The
Yes,
answer
at the
was we're
beginning.
trying.
Yeah.
We are trying.
But nobody's been to these other towns this year, you just said.
No, they've been to Town of Carroll
And Town of Jefferson.
Town of Jefferson.
And
Town of-
again, I mean, with all due respect, sir, we are 10 people who are completely volunteers that are running the airport and doing everything that we need to do to keep the place going. And then to just say, you guys, like, asking more and more of volunteers gets really hard. I mean, I think at some point, when you ask so much of a volunteer, people just get tired of
Yeah,
it
but when
and
you're
done.
asking the town year after year after year for funds, and I think this year the budget's got $8,000 in there? Or was it six?
Six.
6,000? You've been getting $6,000 for us, asking us for money after year and year, but you're not growing. The airport's not growing as far as picking up the other towns and working for the North Country. Mount Washington, I mean, to me, if the commissioner, even our local commissioner, should be out there knocking on their door every day. They're the biggest beneficiary from that airport, and you get nothing from them. So I'm understanding is
I would dispute, but I think that Littleton is the biggest beneficiary of the airport.
how many people from the airport come to Littleton?
The majority.
How many?
It's much easier for me to say the number of people that are going to the Army of Mount Washington, and it's a couple dozen. Would you agree? It's not hundreds.
It's not hundreds. I would say it's probably.
The
more.
majority of people who come to this airport will visit Littleton and Littleton's businesses at some point during their journey. And as a person who came to this area as a tourist myself, absolutely. I've been to the Army of Mount Washington once.
That's a related
Okay, but
question. You've got people with hangars out there, or planes that citizens of some of these other towns are talking about. Have you ever tried to get them to go to their local boards?
Do we have anybody that lives in the other towns?
David now lives in Coon Mountain.
And you don't want him going to the
And you don't
town?
want to go.
Dave Presby?
Presby lives in Sugar
Sugar
Hill,
Hill,
and Sugar Hill's a
and
member.
he
Oh, I thought you said they weren't a member.
No, Sugar Hill is a member.
They're not
Franconia.
Franconia Franconia
But
is
he can
not,
speak
and
to
I do know that
He can speak to
Franconia.
Franconia.
Yes, and I know that both
must be right.
David and both the boys have gone to Franconia to try to get them back involved.
Yeah. If one of these towns came back in, would we have to come up with a brand new agreement that all?
No, they just join in and then just wind up getting a
And they would
seat.
just vote on it themselves.
Yeah, and then they would have a commissioner in the seat and, and then like whatever, depending on their population,
Sure.
the IMA share would go down by, that, whatever that percentage is.
We have to.
Okay, I just want to.
One more question.
No, I'm sorry.
We have to
They
wrap
talk,
it up.
I've got a list of questions. Then we need to make these meetings longer or have more meetings, because I told you we're falling short of time. I got questions to these people and I want answers.
I know.
And the budget committee deserves those
Yeah,
answers.
but I think, well, we've asked enough questions and we've got enough input that we
I
have
don't.
a sense of what
I
they're.
want to know how many commissioners Littleton's had in the last 6 years. How many commissioners has Littleton actually had? Because you put one on last year and that one's gone already.
He left, that's not our doing.
I know, but how many commissioners has Littleton had in the last 6 years?
I can't speak to 6 years, sir, because I've only been on the commission for 2.5. I can tell you that
You're
Dayton
the
is
third.
new, Dave Ernstberger had been appointed by the town, and this is you guys appointing him, this is not us. I mean, the commission doesn't pick who the commissions are, the town does.
So the town appointed Mr. Ernsberger, he resigned, I think he had indicated to me that he's gone half the year in Texas, and it just wasn't really working for him to be absent as much
We've
as
had
he
three,
was.
the last 6
And
years.
then,
Three.
okay, and then Jim Mason was before that, and I'm not sure how long Jim had been on.
We had a vacancy.
Okay, I got one more. This
The last
is important,
one.
it is important.
Okay.
This is all important stuff.
Yes, it is all.
Last year-
So was the stuff that's waiting.
Fine, then extend the meeting. Don't throw us out of here at 5:45 or 5:46 at
We're
night.
gonna also,
This is, we need more time. Yeah, here's my question. Last year, you brought in a booklet. I think it was that Aircraft Owners and Pilots magazine. You showed us the ad that was in that. I still have the ad at home. I should have brought it in. In that ad, you talked about the airport up here. You mentioned Mount Washington. You mentioned Mountain View Grand. You mentioned some of the ski areas. There was not one word in there about Littleton or Littleton businesses. Do you still have that same ad in this magazine? Or do you have a new ad in this magazine that talks about Littleton businesses?
I'm not aware that we place ads in magazines.
Oh yeah, you brought us a copy of it.
Are you sure it wasn't the article that?
No, it was an ad. It was an ad. It was an ad from your airport. We have a copy of it.
So
And it didn't mention one thing about Littleton.
I will go over to Ralph's house. Do you have a smartphone you can take a picture? And we can send the picture to them of
I think
the-
I got
Oh, I would
that.
think that
I
they
paid
would
the
have
bills,
Well,
I didn't pay for that.
we're not spending any money on that kind of advertising, but,
So where do you advertise Littleton businesses?
on the website.
On the website.
Through the fly-ins. So a lot of Littleton businesses were sponsors of our
But on
fly-in.
a fly-in, your landing fees only amount to $1,200 a year with all those airplanes coming in?
For the fly-in, we waive
For landing fees.
The landing fees are not charged to private pilots who are not corporate. There are no landing fees.
Why not?
Because generally airports don't charge that, and frankly, if you do charge it, you're gonna wind up losing traffic.
Yeah, so those pilots are already paying a substantial amount with their fuel purchases to contribute to the airports, and it's just not a very common thing anywhere in the country for small, non-commercial planes to pay landing fees. They pay overnight ramp fees to park their planes, that's very common, and we do that.
okay, just what you're asking for, I get a little explanation on the bottom of your budget. Okay, 18,111 times .457, what is that?
Okay, so the IMA requires each town to pay on a per capita basis.
Right.
The per capita basis is just your population.
Yeah.
So what I did is I took all of the member towns, added up all of their
Oh, okay.
populations,
Yeah.
and Littleton's population is 45.7% of the total.
Okay, which is probably gonna be the same as 6,000 times $1.45, which you also gave us a figure of, right? $1.41.
It's $1.41
Yeah,
per
so
ton.
6,000 on the $1.41 is fairly close to that
Correct.
figure.
And the $18,000 is after we looked at our revenue and what our expected expenses are.
And this sheet, this is an improvement over previous years.
I thought this year's presentation was much more informative.
And this is better, this,
Very good.
we've never gotten,
You should have gotten that last year, because I did the exact same thing. I was not here last year.
Yeah.
I did not.
No, I know. I just remember leaving last year and I was like, I didn't get a good
So,
understanding to be able to make a
Right.
kind of informed decision
The other thing
about it,
that,
but having this agreement, number one, is key, and then really understanding sort of what the trends are with small regional airports.
right,
and
the other
how-
thing I just want to leave everybody with is, I have spoken to 4 plane owners this year who have all indicated interest in building a hangar. One person's purchased property in Littleton, and they're supposedly going to be building a house somewhere, I think on Slate Ledge, is what he told me. So he has a plane, he's from Rhode Island, I believe. So he's supposedly in the process of building a hangar. And just as an aside on this, second home ownership is a fabulous thing for all of the North Country because they draw very little in terms of services, and for the most part, people who build second homes are not building your $100,000 home, they're building your $300,000 home. So if the town of Littleton, because of the airport, gets one second home owner, it pays its share.
Thank you very
Good.
much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank you.
it. I will just say that if anyone has any other questions, forward them to me and I will forward them to the commissioners and we can get the information for you.
I don't know if this will help, but I mean, if you'd like to see the Fuel Farm presentation, it's got a lot of statistics about, where money's generated and things that are helpful for airports. I'm happy to send that to you.
Right.
It's not
Okay,
PowerPoint.
if you send that to me, I will send it out to the
And I think,
members.
obviously, whatever you can do down next year, as far as quantifying and qualifying, you can see that that's a sense of what people are asking.
It is. I just want to keep in mind that, again, you're asking people who are
Oh,
volunteers to sit in front of a camera system.
You're preaching to the choir.
You're talking about a very labor-intensive thing.
That's what I said, you're preaching to the choir.
But it is one of our goals to get better.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
understand.
we're trying, but it's just, again, there's only so many hours in a
No,
day.
yes, but again,
Yeah.
we're not questioning that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Very good.
Appreciate it. And have a nice, safe drive home, please. Have a good time. Thank you.
And we
Appreciate
can
it.
move on now.
And I do have a copy of their agreement. I had it last week and I didn't get it handed out, so if anyone wants a copy that doesn't have one,
They passed out. They brought it up.
sorry.
What I would like to see,
Okay, Wendy, you have just a second. Karen wants to whisper in your ear
Oh, sure.
before you leave.
Because of our schedule tonight, I've asked if Channel 2 would come next week. So we are freeing that time up. They'll come next week, or Tuesday,
Okay.
for a presentation. We do have, the Opera House right now. You want to sit right here?
Come around here.
Oh, sorry.
Steve, you don't mind if I sit beside
I didn't, no, but I didn't leave you enough room.
Oh, yeah, I can get in here.
We were also supposed to have headrest tonight. Steve, we were also supposed to have headrest tonight, but they canceled.
It's okay.
Thank you.
You see, the lights are on.
Have to go.
The lights are always on.
Oh, I know.
We've been busy.
Yes.
Next 3 weeks, Tuesdays.
We'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay, folks,
Just waiting for Karen. She's got the budget sheets.
she was getting a little insight into
I think so.
fund solicitation.
Yes, so.
While we're waiting for Karen, if I can just utilize this time a little bit. We have only really scheduled through the end of November for our meetings, but in the past, we have had every Tuesday practically in December. So I am going to ask all of you to also put the next 3 Tuesdays on your agenda for meetings here to continue on with the budget discussion. Later on, after we've had some presentations, maybe you can give me some feedback on how you want to bring it all together. And we'll also ask Karen what we have left. I've actually gone through the town budget to see which departments we still have left, and it's the highway department that we have for next week. But we also have the warrant articles and the general budget in particular that we have to bring together. They also have a couple of negotiated agreements that they're going through. They'll give us a timeline on when that might be brought to us. We also have the school who has a negotiated agreement, and possibly another warrant article for land purchase. We'll find out more about that Thursday. So we do have a meeting this Thursday with the school up at the cafeteria, 4 o'clock. Okay.
There's that one-on-one, probably a better way to-
Yes. No, you can't work very well.
Good, okay. Karen, you have a handout
You have
to refer to.
items for me too, Karen, right? Thank you.
I think I got enough copies here, but this is the Opera House and Police Department. One other copy for Renee.
With the rest of us.
No, it shows the revised default and the proposed. It's in the middle, so. Yeah, and the updated year-to-date numbers. So good on it. I've got an extra one.
Good.
Okay,
Do we have it? Are we good?
we all set? want to make sure that I
So
have one
is
for the
this
chief.
a petition warrant article presentation, or is this just a department?
Department, isn't it?
Okay.
The select board is going to have a work session in the very near future to go over
Warrant
warrant articles.
So Karen, this
Sounds fun.
updates the 1119?
Yes. This is just the budgets that we're talking about tonight. When we get through our budget, one more department budget next week, I will update all of the whole complete package for you.
Okay.
And why I did this is I figured it was quicker than trying to finger through everything and go back and forth between the revised default and the proposed. So I'll go down through like I've been doing with all the others.
Do you want me to introduce myself again? I think I know most of you, but I'm Sue Pilot, the Opera House manager. Ian. I've been the Opera House manager since May of 2017, and prior to that, I worked at the Opera House with the Chamber of Commerce, booking the Opera House venue. Last year, we came and presented what we had done in a very short time, from May to November, and we did, we had good success in that short little period of time, but I think you'll see tonight that we've gone way over our hefty goal that we had proposed for 2018, and we're already looking to even go higher with some new ideas for 2019. So Karen?
Yes, sorry about that.
That's okay, that's all right.
So in the center is the proposed budget. On the outside edge, on the right-hand side, is the revised default budget. So we're gonna talk more about the center numbers. We're gonna look at the revenues first. We do have an increase in the revenues for rental fees from users, and that is of the venue. We're keeping the rental fees of the office rentals at the current amount that we had in 2018 approved budget. We're bumping up the event revenues because we hope to have continued and increased events at the Opera House. These are Opera House sponsored events. We recently had a craft fair, which I stopped by the night before, and it was packed.
And that's a no cost to the Opera House or taxpayers craft fair. We raised over $1,000 just by renting tables in the space. That's our fourth, that type of, you know, it doesn't raise a lot of money, but any event that we have, big or small, helps in some way. And as that one did do. It was tremendously attended, and a lot of good raves.
We have the Historical Society, which I maintain as $1 in there. Interest income, we have budgeted $100. We bumped up the donations, and the donations for special purposes, and miscellaneous revenue of $1. Sometimes we get a rebate or a refund on something and need a place to put it. So the budgeted projected income in the proposed budget is $45,602. The subtotal of expenditures is $100,680, and I'll go down through those numbers. So the appropriation on the tax rate we're saying is $55,078. That is $5,659 more than what we asked for in 2018. It's an 11% increase. The expenditures, we want to give our non-union employees a 3% increase. And we are decreasing the hours that the Opera House manager works in the proposed budget. We have a receptionist that is going to be learning a lot about the Opera House and having different hours than the manager does in some days and some weeks. And that person is going to be working 16 hours a week. So that adds $9,568. And that's where the big bump is in some of this. We have a couple janitors, actually, their hours are spread out, and we want to increase their hours to 30 hours a week. The more the building is used, the more it has to be cleaned. And some of the janitors are doing some other little carpentry jobs or little extra improvements that need to be done and kept up with.
Absolutely, and I do janitor work too, just to let you know.
She does.
When you have an event, do they have to have a cleaning fee attached to that?
You need to ask Susan.
What happens is that everything that's brought in is taken out, is what we have for an agreement for events that are private.
Carry in, carry out.
Carry in, carry out, just like the park, everywhere. We do have a fee if they want the Opera House staff to clean the venue, take care of their setups or anything. We do have a fee attached in the contract. Seldom is it used because most people who have events there, unless it's a large concert, we do take care of. But because I have a group of friends of the Opera House, it's all done on volunteer basis. So it generally is, the event coordinator who handles all the cleanup. They have something that they sign within the contract that they're responsible for cleanup.
But yeah, I guess even if they clean up well.
Well, we still have to mop and we
Yeah.
still have to do that. I mean, for an example, this craft fair that we had, it took the janitor 4 washings of the floor to get it clean because there were so many people all day. And that's upstairs, hallways, and in the hallway, in the grand hall.
I was just wondering if there was like a $50 fee on top of it or something like
Yeah.
that to
We
offset.
did increase our rental a little bit for that, and we did put in a cleaning fee. There is a cleaning fee if someone wants to opt for that.
And is your reduced hours, is that?
It's not the same.
Well, the reason that I started out wanting to do part-time. I retired from the state of New Hampshire and went part-time for the chamber, and decided that, I would interview for this job on a part-time basis. But of course, because of all the work that the Opera House has been doing, we've increased business, we've increased foot traffic, we've increased phone calls, bookings, everything. I mean, we're up to, I should have brought that number with me, but we've increased at least over 100 bookings since last year. So all of that produces more work for me, more work. I needed to have someone in the office to help with the bookings because I'm so busy just doing administrative work and the management of the building that I needed to bring someone else in. So she's gonna learn a lot of how to book, how to market, how to do our social media pages, how to advertise, and man the office.
How to collect money?
How to collect money, she's already learning that very well, yes.
That's right.
Okay, so I mean, that's okay with you,
It is because my schedule, I work with her 1 day a week, and then I still come in on a Friday and do timesheets, talk to them. I meet with everyone on Wednesday, the staff, all the staff. We have meetings and we talk about the issues or anything that we need to have a discussion about. And I think so far it's been working well. She's been there about 5 weeks and she's already been amazing and is going to be a wonderful asset to the Opera House.
So how many staff members do we have?
I have
We
2.
have a manager and we have what?
Yeah, I have 2 part-time custodians who split. They don't work the same day. I have someone on Monday and Wednesday who works 8 hours a week. Then I have someone on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. He works between 12 and 15 hours a week. Then I have the receptionist clerical help who is going to work an average of 14 to 16 hours a week, and I'll be working 16 hours a week. So the office is generally going to be manned 5 days a week. We are only open till noon on Fridays, but we're there for events. And just to clarify, we have a wonderful group of friends of the Opera House who I kind of created a little bit with Dan Stearns and Dick Alberini and others who want to volunteer at the Opera House, who help us with these events, cleaning up, taking care of chairs, taking care of tables, so we don't have to pay extra staff for that.
So on the janitorial side, we're talking about 2 people for
Yes.
a total of 30 hours between them?
Yeah.
what sometimes happens, somebody will get sick, you need somebody to fill in. You got somebody that might have some, well, we had someone pass away. So we had an empty position there, which Sue filled for quite a while until we could get somebody on board. So having two works the best because you always have someone that can step back
They
up.
cover for each other.
Yeah. And they also are called in for events at some point, sometimes to unlock and set up or tear down from an event. So to have a little bit of flexibility.
Very rarely do we do that. I mean, only if we've got another event the very next day and we have to have it cleaned up on a weekend, do we do that. Generally, it's Friends of the Opera House who take care of things, but there are some things that they can't do. We've been having a lot of back-to-back events, so a couple of times I've had to have the janitor come in for a couple of hours here and there.
So the Opera House management, is that just you or is that you and somebody else?
That's me.
That's you.
And a twin sister.
Yeah, and I'm like evil, yeah.
That's going from 30 to 48,000?
That's for the, all of the staff, that's not just me, that's for all staff, the two part-time
Don't you wish?
Well, yeah, it would be okay, I'd take that, I mean, I think I deserve it, but, but no, that's for everyone.
Okay, Karen?
We continue down, of course, Social Security, Medicare is part of the benefits that's on wages. We have electricity, which has an expected 11% increase. We have heating fuel, which we've kept the same. We feel that that's comparable in the proposed budget. We should be able to maintain that. We continue to try to do energy efficient things to the Opera House to improve the efficiency. We have bumped the usage in the water and sewer. The more people using that Opera House, the more it costs you to use water and eliminate the water. Communications and phone, there is an increase here, and that is because we now have the internet down there. I could not include it in the default budget, so, but we do have to include it in the proposed. We have marketing and media, and at this point, there's been some marketing, but there could be more. With somebody having more time to do that, we could do more marketing. And as we get more events, we also need to do.
And those would be the things that I'll be able to devote more time to. If I have someone in the office handling the bookings and callbacks and emails and follow up on events to see how everything went, this will be something that I can devote more time on. And as I said, we have a lot of great ideas for 2019 that are going to involve marketing and media.
And do we have any high school students?
I do. I have volunteers. I have community service. As a matter of fact, this is our second annual Santa party that the Opera House is hosting. It's free for all community children. I got donations of sugar cookies. Last year I baked over 250 myself. So, and I learned not to do that again. I received donations from a couple of local businesses that of sugar cookies and decorating. The kids come free. We do a holiday sing-along. Mr. Alberini plays the piano. We do a holiday movie. We have popcorn. They're going to decorate the cookies for their snacks. And they love it. When they were all leaving last year, they're like, can we do this again? So it's a great event for the kids.
But those high school kids, I mean, you're
Oh, they
really
come.
resource.
Oh, yeah. They're the ones who help the kids.
Oh, that, in that respect too.
Oh,
yeah.
yes,
But I'm
they
just
come.
saying, in,
Yeah.
you know, in general, I mean, there's a lot of those kids, especially juniors and seniors,
and I had
that are thinking about stuff that.
I had a wonderful girl this summer who provided some community service hours with me. I have a couple others who come in when I need to have special things done. You know, stamping things, cutting out things, creating posters, flyers.
Yeah.
I call Connie Ward and she sends them down.
My question on the marketing is more, how do you connect with other venues down the road, like Portland?
Yeah.
So when someone is traveling through or going to be in the area, how do we connect with other
Yeah,
larger
I'm-
venues to be with them.
Yeah, I'm
and sync with
already
them.
doing, in talks with the Medallion in Gorham and the Barry Opera House, the 3 opera houses in our circuit, to try to encourage groups to do a circuit for all 3 opera houses. We hope to do that in 2019 because a lot of the events that they have, for example, Medallion, they're much smaller than what we can do because we can host a larger event. So in talks with Denise, who's the town manager in Gorham, she's sending people my way that are too big for them. And same with me, if I have someone that's really small and really doesn't want to pay the fee for us, I might want to go to the Medallion.
I was just thinking of broadening
Yeah,
it even more,
yeah.
so especially Portland,
Yeah,
Maine. Because
yeah.
it's amazing, even Catamount, they were able to grab a performance by a top-notch performer that was in Burlington and was just hanging for a couple of days. And so those are the types of performances and
I do
events.
have someone who has been in talks with me lately with helping at the Opera House that has the background and the knowledge of this, as well as booking. So I'm hoping to utilize that person.
Curating
Yes,
the people
absolutely.
that volunteer is really vital.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're even thinking about doing something that if this person is agreeable to come along to provide tech support, lighting, sound, because you probably already know that we're trying to get sound and lighting for the Opera House because we've really never had any that was owned by the Opera House. That will help us entice people to come to the Opera House. This person, if it works out, we may or may not come up with an agreement, is it okay to say that? That he gets a portion of the revenue that we bring in for a large event, for him to do the tech work, the booking, everything. So,
What you kill.
basically it will increase revenue for the Opera House, it'll increase awareness, Portland, Boston area, Manchester, Plymouth, wherever we can reach. And that's something that was lacking at the Opera House.
Yeah, I think that's the part that we need to curate.
Yes.
There was a barrier earlier when the chamber was still in there. We had reached out to Sue and I talking. I think we talked to I don't know, what do they call, a manager.
Yes.
And one of the barriers we had was the sound system even that we had at the time wasn't adequate for their performers to sign on. But we did just recently get notified that we've been awarded a Littleton Fund grant for $20,000 to buy a new sound system. So
Which
we're
is
working on that.
really needed at the Opera House because what we do have is owned by others and half the time we don't have access to it, and so that hindered the operation of the Opera House. This new way that we're going, trying to get grants and funding for our own equipment, for Town of Littleton owned equipment, is going to benefit the Opera House.
In the select board last night at their meeting voted to support a grant application to the USDA Community Facilities Program for a $50,000 grant, up to a $50,000 grant to help with the cost of upgrading the lighting system. So we've had a technical expert come in and take a look at what would be needed.
Which is antique.
It is.
Yeah, some of the equipment that was there is over 35 years old,
Yeah,
and half of it.
Donated.
We're talking some of the light. We're talking
I mean,
about
some
of that is
I mean,
just,
right now,
Yeah,
currently.
when you light the candles in the back, it might be to get it going.
It's scary, but we're moving
they call that
forward.
limelight.
The limelight, yeah.
All right,
So we continue down, we've got the events, of course, that's the same as last year in here. We have workers' comp insurance that was never added in 2018. In a department where we have employees, we need to make sure that we include that. We have the increase of the property liability insurance. You notice in the default default budget, that is what it was last year. I have found out through all of this process that the property liability insurance is not required by law. So we do not change it in the default budget, even though we've got an increase to it. or decrease if so may be. We can do the workers' comp or unemployment because those are items required by law. Building maintenance and minor repairs, we had in 2018, 19,000 budgeted. We've had some one-time purchases that are removed from this. And we had talked about putting a heating exchange amount in here, but have talked about putting it on a warrant article. The heating exchange, one invoice or one piece of that will be $9,100. And then we have another heating problem that has to do with circulation.
In the entryway, yeah.
That is about $11,000.
One is for the new boiler and one is for the heat exchange for the entryway. The entryway unit that's been in there has never been sufficient for that. So we've been in talks, our building facility coordinator for the town and myself are reaching out to people to get estimates and.
So that might be a warrant article.
That will,
yes.
probably for 20,000.
But one of the 4 or 5 propane boilers has failed and needs replacement?
One of the boilers.
You know, those are.
Yeah,
It's boiler number 3, if
Number
that
3,
means
yeah,
anything
we had some
to you.
Like
repairs
engine
on it.
number
We're
3.
told that,
Yeah.
won't be able to make it through the season,
Yeah.
but not to count on it.
Yeah, we're hoping that it's gonna make through till warm weather comes because they've gotta shut off the heat and everything to do this, so.
And, I mean, even though those are, how old are those now? 10 years old? 10 years old, is that the?
life of those expectancy, 10 years?
I think that's what, was it John Baker maybe who told me that it's about,
I don't
could
know
be
anything about
10,
heating
for a
units.
building that size,
Why
probably,
not?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were, at the time, they were obviously, and obviously you see a lot of places, you look at that, that's the furnace, or that's the boiler, I mean, they're obviously much smaller than what we had before, but I mean, you know, that one mechanical rooms we have on Cottage Street level that you walk in there.
The boiler
Two on
room,
one
yeah.
side and
It
two on
seems
the.
pretty advanced.
Yeah.
It does,
Yeah.
but I guess I'm surprised that,
Yeah.
that they already would be.
Our building maintenance coordinator explained to me the details of it, and I couldn't relay it right now, but.
Well, he kind of
Perhaps.
explained it to me that over time with and with the problems of heating the building in itself, I mean, I've gone around, this sounds silly, but I've gone around with caulking and some of the walls in there in the back of the Opera House because you can feel the cold air. I mean, we've had energy conservation groups come in and look at different things, the windows, but there are many places in that building, in the beadboard, all around there, that cold air just comes through there. I mean, we're trying to seal up whenever we feel something. We take it and go out and seal it up and try to do what we can, but.
So last year, there was, wasn't there a warrant article regarding the energy conservation
That was,
plan for doing some work to the?
that was the
There-
stained glass windows?
No, there was a electrical warrant article that we got a portion of it for a grant.
Yeah.
And it was also to put up wallboard in the tower, the room off the tower room.
Yeah.
That has been encumbered and it's an ongoing project. We have to get the electrical work done first before we go forward with the wallboard. Because what's the sense in putting the wallboard on until you get the electrical work done?
And as probably many of you know, a contractor can tell you they'll be there in July, and I'm still waiting in November, so, I mean, it just happens.
But that work also included a grant. The issue of the grant,
Yes.
has that grant been received?
We haven't received it because we
Okay,
haven't,
so it's at the end of that, but is it a guaranteed grant? We
it's
will
for a
get that
certain length
grant?
of time and we can extend that time if we haven't been able to get the contractors together for it.
Okay,
Was that
because
every-
if you can't get the grant, you can't do any of the rest of the work.
Right.
According to the warrant.
Right. There was 2 separate warrant articles. One was 2016 and the other one was last year. So there's 2 of them. One was for 10,000 and the other one was a total of 44,000 with 22,000 coming from a grant.
Right.
so.
Where I was going with that was I was hoping that the fuel usage would drop last year. The Energy Conservation Committee was talking about equalizing the different zones.
Well, they did
making
do
it a little
some
bit more
work.
efficient.
Yeah, there's been
And I'm
some
wondering if
Yeah.
that boiler may have been one of the casualties of that. Maybe it was running.
I don't know, they did do a lot of
It wasn't-
insulation upstairs. The attic is now insulated better than it ever was. You walk upstairs and it's nice and, it's warm upstairs, actually. The problem is that main second floor is our issue.
The timing helps.
Yes.
New thermostat.
Yes, it does help, yeah. But the thermostat that was up there in the tower room has to be replaced because it was an inexpensive unit that was put in there originally by the contractor when the building was renovated. And it was just put in there and really had no thought process as to what the use was gonna be. We use the tower room, conference room a lot. We book it a lot. It's busy and full almost every weekend. So it's failing. Now it's keeping like a constant heat up there at 72 degrees. It's on order, so we're hoping that we can get it so we can regulate the heat ourselves.
Could you actually, I know you don't have it with you tonight, but could you actually send an email to us with the fee structure? I think that
Sure.
would be interesting
Sure.
to know.
Well, if you go to the Littleton Opera House Facebook page or Littleton Opera House
Could you send
website,
it-
I can,
send
if
it to
you
us,
give, if I
please?
have everyone's email.
Just send
Okay.
it and I'll send it out to the
Okay, will
committee.
you send it? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is a fee schedule, contracts, everything, all within our website, if anyone wants to look at it.
Well, I think it's good feedback because
Yeah.
on some of the other fee structures within the community, we've taken a look and said, wait a minute, it needs to be adjusted or whatever.
We did
So-
adjust ours last year. And we had a thought process that we do have a lot of nonprofits who use the Opera House. And we did not want to outprice them because they do utilize the Opera House a lot. But we did raise the fee for private rentals. And I believe the tower room actually really didn't have a fee schedule attached to it. It does have a fee schedule
So
attached now.
anyhow, Karen
Yep.
will get that to
Yes,
us
she
and
will.
I'm sure you all would like to take a look at it too.
Another thing we were thinking about with it before was, is it a not-for-profit or is it a charity? And then, should there be different fee schedules so that we're not, giving away too much
Right.
services not.
Right, because they can bump up
Yes.
Like
into
maybe
each other.
graduated.
And they
Yes,
do.
and they do. I mean,
They do.
Somewhat, let's say, maybe a play is being performed and that's really kind of a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but anyhow, they take up several nights
Mhm.
for rehearsals and everything else, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of things to think about.
There
Have we
is.
hosted any weddings?
We have. And I actually have 2 booked already for June and July of 2019. So we have,
Is there
yes.
a possibility of a Betty Davis wedding?
Well, you know, she is still present in the building,
That's
so
right.
I could ask her.
Well, I don't know what the licensing obstacles may or may not be, but would your daughter like to have a Betty Davis wedding? Would your mother and father like to have their daughter have a Betty Davis wedding?
Well-
You even have tablecloths, table toppers, napkins.
And I was gonna mention
Some
that when
other
we
items
talked
that she
about
could rent
that.
out.
But just so you do know, I do reach out to community members, to businesses, organizations, for donations to the Opera House. We received a good response in 2018 for donations from different sponsors to help us. It's a learning process. You learn
Sure.
from one event that you have that maybe you should have gotten more sponsors. But the good thing is some of these little fundraisers that we do that maybe don't make a lot of money, maybe make 500, 600, 800, because I've had 5 fundraisers this year. That money that I get from that helps us pay a band that maybe we couldn't get a full sponsor for. So, it's a learning curve and we are learning, and each time we do something,
I'm sure.
we learn more.
So we've got general supplies, office supplies is increased to $3,000. 2,000 isn't quite cutting it when you start growing. We added a little bit more in postage. We have a $1 for expenses from special purpose donations and expenses for donations. There are times that somebody will donate money for a special purpose. So we need to make sure we have a line for that. Equipment purchase, maintenance and repair, we have $27.50 in there. And we have a copier printer that we now lease. So that's included in the proposed, it cannot be in the default, even though we have a contract for it. It will be in next year's default if the proposed budget is approved.
And often, the other thing that I just want to mention is that talking about donations that we receive, not only monetary donations, but we also receive donations, as Karen was talking about, for tablecloths, for event supplies, for table toppers, skirting, platters, just things, because the Opera House had nothing. It didn't even have a fork in the Opera House. Now we have a supply of anything that anybody wants to come in there and have an event. We have a table set up in the office. It's decorated so people can see this is what you can have. You know, they have to pay extra because we are going to rent the table linens. We're going to rent, you know, the centerpieces that we have, the platters, and we've had a lot of people take us up on that. And, you know, the people who have donated, Karen in particular, is a wonderful sponsor for the Opera House. She's always searching for things for the Opera House, for great deals, and donates them to the Opera House. So we have a lot of friends that love the Opera House.
Thank you. So the difference between the proposed and the default under expenditures, the proposed and the 2018 approved is $16,258. It's a 19.3% increase on the expenditure side, but if you go back up to the appropriation on the tax rate, the amount that's bumped and the amount needed from taxes is $5,659. It's 11% increase.
Very good. Well, we wish it lots of success.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful building.
It is
and
beautiful. And last year, I do have to say, last year when we projected 35,000, I thought, well, we're never going to reach 35,000 because I think it went from like 3,000 to 12,000 and then we went to 20 and
29,000.
29. Then when Karen and I were talking, we're like, can we really do 35,000? And now I'm looking to do 55, 60,000. I mean, our goal, of course, is to relieve the taxpayers of the burden for the Opera House and to help us become self-sufficient. And I know it's a hefty goal, but I think it can be obtained.
A few weddings would do that.
Yes, do you know anybody that wants to?
I've been married twice.
Okay.
I don't have any more left in
Well,
No more weddings.
well, your children, your grandchildren, put the word out.
Yeah.
We're available.
Since I've been on the budget committee, one of my first 2-year goals was to shut down the Opera House and get rid of
I
it.
know you told me that last year.
Because it was costing us a fortune.
Well, that was better than the ones who wanted to
Nothing
blow it
coming
up
out.
and put it in the river.
Ooh,
Well, I don't care where they put it, I wanted it out of town because it was costing us too much money. But I gotta tell you, you've done an amazing job, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
There's significant improvement there. And I gotta hand it to you and the crew, you've turned me right around on the Opera
well, I
House.
appreciate that. Thank you very
There's
much.
such potential.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
There is potential, and I also have to thank, all the other departments in town, the PD, the highway crew. We cleaned out the basement, which had been a pack rat of a haven for everyone to throw things in there. It was just, you couldn't even walk through that room. And we pretty well cleaned it all out. The highway department came and helped me, the transfer station helped me. The PD, Chief Smith has been in frequently to give me advice on things at the Opera House, the fire chief. So we're appreciative of all the departments that are also pushing for the success of the Opera House.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
to the volunteers, too.
Yes, thank you, volunteers.
All right.
Are we ready for the police department? I think we can squeeze it in.
Okay, I'm leaving, Paul. It's your turn.
I'll be sneaking out of things before I get to the files.
That's fine, thank you, Heather.
I started on this the last time that we started working on budgets. And this is when we decided to bring in departments. So when the police chief gets settled.
So last year, just as he's getting settled up here, there wasn't a warrant article, was there, a special warrant, was there?
There was a warrant article for a full-time police officer.
Was it? Okay,
Yes.
was that? Okay. All right, and that was the only one, right?
That's all I can remember for the police.
We had
It's
some
hard to
ordinance,
remember
we had an
from-
ordinance change, but I don't think there were any other
I think it was just with-
police-sponsored warrant articles.
Right, okay.
The dog one.
So I'm gonna go through this like I have all the departments. Again, the proposed is in the middle. I'll try to be very quick. Of course, the default and proposed, you see the new officer in here for the full year. You also notice in the proposed the 3% non-union increases. And that has to do with a couple positions and permanent positions, admin position, part-time positions. There's no changes in the overtime. Under travel reimbursement, we have a reduction because we have use of the admin car, which is not just for the police department. That is available for other departments to use. They have to sign it in and out with the police department. There is health insurance increase, and that some has to do with changes within the department. It also has to do with the new person, new officer that was hired. We have, of course, the life, disability, Social Security, Medicare, and retirement. The retirement does show an increase. Some of that has to do, or majority of it has to do with the new person that's through the warrant article.
Because the rate actually went down.
The rate went down.
To, remember that, we had 20.
It should be in your binder.
Yeah, I'm sure it
And I
is.
didn't bring it with me.
That's okay.
I apologize.
If you had it on the top of your head, I'm just gonna write it down. Okay.
Training, we have an increase in training. We have the prosecutor training. The prosecutor hasn't been to a regular training event, and this is something the chief feels that needs to happen. Also, the DARE conference has a $100 increase in it. You go to uniforms, there is an increase in the uniforms for the admin officer. That also can be included in the default budget.
Can I back up just for a second? The sign-on bonuses, 3,000, is that known or anticipated?
Those have to be paid out, so there are contractual obligations.
People we already have.
Yeah, we don't give them the money right up front.
No, I know.
So they have to meet a certain
Is that a
contractual
year?
obligation, a year, in some cases maybe even longer, depending on what training is required.
So continuing on to professional services, grant match, that's exactly the same as what it was last year. Under telephone communications, there is a slight decrease. One item has an increase, one item's been removed in the proposed budget. Under data processing, we have a contractual increase that could not be included in the default budget, only last year's amount could be included. Medical services, custodial services are the same, professional technical services are the same, towing vehicles is the same, facilities maintenance is the same. Electricity, we have the 11% expected increase. Heating fuel is the same, water has a slight increase to it. Sewer is the same. Printing is the same. Dues, we have a slight increase in dues. And if you look down through, you can see that in New Hampshire LEAP, and then prosecution dues for the Bar Association have a slight increase in them. There is a reduction in general supplies under evidence preservation. In training, it's same, basically all of the numbers down through this entire rest of this page have not changed from the default number or the approved 2018 budget. Equipment purchase vehicle is the same as what it's approved in 2018 budget. Equipment purchase field has an increase in it because we have a couple new items. We have a portable AED. We have media storage, hard drive space, as we have more and more information downloaded from evidence to video evidence from activities. We have to have the space to store it. Tasers, there's an increase in cost there. There's a camera program proposed for a 4-year program, but this is something that needs to be replaced on a regular basis as the cameras get older and aren't functioning as well and can't be repaired. We need to continue to replace them. The radio update of the radios, we've talked about if we do this, we would be doing it on a warrant article or a grant. Special investigations, bike patrol, events and activities, detailed policing, and the dues to the SOU are all the same numbers as what they were in the 2018 approved. So the difference between the 2019 proposed and 2018 approved is $54,144. It's a 3.09% increase from 2018's approved. The difference between the default and the proposed is, the default and the 2018 approved is $34,296. It's a 1.96% increase. And the difference between the revised default and the proposed is $19,848. It's 1.11%.
However,
okay,
the caveat is that there will be a negotiated agreement, so that does not include any raises for next year. So this is an increase without any increases in salaries for next year.
for the union.
For the
For the
union.
union employees.
I just want to make sure everyone understands that, so.
As it is with all the other.
Right.
Now, we do have special detail.
Isn't 2019, isn't that probably,
What's that?
isn't this the second year of the contract?
It was a
2000.
short contract.
Yeah. So
It was only a 2-year
Ends in
contract.
2019.
Yeah.
So special detail, we actually have a reduction there because of the savings in retirement and a little bit of an increase in workers' comp. So it's $22 different. You look at the next page, you're gonna see parking meters.
But what are those? Are those just offset each other anyway?
Basically, they are called revenue neutral budgets. They don't use anything from the taxes to pay for the expenditures for them.
I mean, basically, the income is your best guess and the expenses are your best guess, but regardless of whatever they are, they will virtually equal each other.
They match each other during budgeting. What happens is anything left over, if you have less expenditures than you do revenues, will close out and go to these individual special revenue fund balances.
Yeah, you've gone over that already,
Yes.
haven't you? I think I missed it. That was last week. Was that last week?
Some of it was, yeah. Well, we've talked about it in the past too. And I gave sheets of what the fund balances were, and I did bring mine. I'm sorry for the
So-
different departments.
So how do you use those fund balances? I mean, when is it appropriate to use those fund balances?
There's different fund balances that can be used different ways. The police department special detail fund balance actually can be used by the police chief and the town manager and selectmen. They can actually approve expending that fund balance. It's been brought on warrant articles in the past. It does not have to be, but it's been brought up so that we're open. The
But
parking
that-
meter.
But that fund balance, I mean, the fund itself is, so when Joe's construction company needs, 4 officers for 4 days and patrol cars,
That's for this
that comes,
particular right there,
we
yes.
bill them and that money goes into this account. So we pay the officers out of the account and then we bill the contractor and that money goes back into the account. So it doesn't affect the overall, my police department budget nor the taxpayer. It's basically, it's revolving.
I think what Karen was talking about was, and
The use of
surplus.
it.
that's-
Surplus of it.
That's what I was
But
asking
it's,
about.
but the law is very specific about what that can be used for.
It's used basically for police equipment, safety equipment.
So you can
administrative
offset,
fees.
let's say you had something that you needed and it fell within the guidelines. You would say, okay, we're gonna offset this expense by.
Correct.
So you would notify us. So as, what I'm thinking, I'm trying to say, is that when we go through this because it's a big budget this year and we have a lot, I mean, we just have a lot this year on our plate. Can we look at some of those fund balances and say, can you?
You have.
We do, I know.
You have the
yeah.
fund balances.
So I think that's what I'm saying to all of you, just kind of take a look at that when we're going through the budgets to see if there's anything that can
One thing,
possibly.
most of the budgets, you have to take through a warrant article to use those fund balances. The parking meter has to be done on a warrant article. The,
You can use that for sidewalks and roads as well.
yes, but it has to be on a
No, I
warrant
know.
article.
Correct.
Right, I mean,
The
we have to do it
opera house.
right, but I'm just saying, we do have this.
The special detail, we've had it on warrant articles. We don't have to, but it has been. Because we've used it for safety equipment. And the voters have approved using that. The transfer station has to be through a warrant article. And that has to be approved by the voters. We can change those if we wanted to switch a majority of the accounts over or the special revenue funds over to what's called revolving fund, like the Parks and Rec Department has a revolving fund. The commissioners have authority to expend that. It could be set up, and that's one thing I've thought about doing, is setting all of these different funds up so the selectmen have the authority to expend from those funds, especially where there might be an emergency.
So it's always a great balance of deciding when to use these and when to say we just need to cut back and not spend as much.
Right.
Because you do need to have some in the fund balances in those areas. So all I'm saying is just take a good look at it and understand them so we can ask our questions later. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, because the overall budget is up 6.58%. And I think what you're saying is, could we use some of those fund balances to try and reduce that maybe down to a normal 3%?
Yeah, or sometimes you just have to say, we have to cut someplace, you can't keep spending. So I mean, but we also have that option. So just take a look at it and understand it, so.
Last meeting, you weren't here, I handed out the revised budget, revised draft default budget, and I did new calculations because one payment that was in the sewer budget isn't due until 2020. When I went through and did my debt schedule that you had asked me for, I found out one of those payments, the one that we had an additional warrant article on, isn't due until 2020. So it got removed from the 2019 default and proposed. So the 2019 proposed budget is 4.68%
Okay, it's a little better.
than it
We gotta
was.
go down about 1.68%.
So is the park committee looking at the fees and fines and everything? Is that part of their task or?
We've got the chairman here.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we have a meeting tomorrow night. Welcome to stop over.
No, that's fine.
Oh, yeah.
So can you send that out to
We're also
us?
looking for interested
But are you
individuals
making,
in the community.
are you guys
to
kind of
join.
making recommendations or?
Yes, we have a mission statement and
Oh.
the parking study, working with North Country Council. And right now it's in draft form. So, meter fees, looking at new locations for meters or eliminating meters, you know, there's a lot on the table, so.
Okay, so when you do come up with something on that, did you want him to send it out to the committee to take a look?
Well, I was just.
When you
Yeah,
can,
so
when you can?
I was just wondering if that was gonna be built into this year's
Okay.
budget eventually.
It's in draft, early draft.
It's premature, right?
Yes.
It's still in draft form. We're still working with North Country Council and the other committee members. They're still weighing in.
So I'm gonna try to finish these two last pages up.
Yes.
Parking meter revenues, actually yes, it's 2 pages I believe here. This has very little changes in it. The proposed budget has a poles, and I had to abbreviate straightener, so that the parking enforcement officer can straighten some of the poles as they get bent throughout town. And of course, we've got our 3% increase for non-union employees. The amount is $1,140 difference between the 2018 approved. It's a 2.06% increase.
And Karen, the enhanced downtown parking loan, that's the financing of the parking spaces.
That used to be through a head leasing.
Okay. And this is year 5 coming up,
Yes,
so we're almost halfway there.
yes.
And, you know, something to think about is the parking meter fund is relatively small, and for the amount of demand that, you know, we have parking issues all over the place. And for us to actually address those, we could use this fund to harness significant amount of grant funds to do a lot more. If we actually moved, for example, this debt to our debt cycle out of
To the general fund.
To the general fund debt cycle rather than having it parked here.
And you're saying you currently don't have funds available to apply against those grant
Pretty tight.
requirements?
It's pretty tight. I think the total in the parking fund right now is about 20 grand.
Yes.
You know, for example, there's a piece of property for sale near the downtown right now that abuts one of our parking lots, and I think, I forget how many parking spaces we figured it could add. It might have been 50 parking spaces.
Which one?
The
Across
lot.
the river?
Yeah, right, or the one over here on this side. And, you know, we just don't have the funds to be able to react, you know, or, you know, the parcel across the street, you know, we could leverage those funds for significant grant funds to purchase that parcel, but we only have $20,000.
Okay, but to move this out of this budget would require,
A warrant article.
okay, so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it might be interesting to, we'll maybe present that to you as a warrant article and get you guys to consider it.
Not necessarily, I mean, obviously to make better use of the money is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
It might be easy to get a warrant article to make the purchase, come up with a matching money for the purchase.
The difficult thing is being able to be ready for the grants, that you might not know what's out there.
Oh, for the unknown.
Yeah, for the unknown, where if I have a parking fund that I could, you know.
I mentioned that just for any of you who weren't around when that occurred, and that was better than what we were doing previously.
That's probably great.
It only took about 5 years to sell it, and efforts by 3 different people, but.
Well, I know that our budget would, like the parking meter fund would be in literally over, you know, in the hundreds of thousands, so that we have money to leverage towards parking right now if we didn't have that payment in there.
I have one question. Chief, I got one question. Last year you had budgeted for a new police cruiser, and you got a new police cruiser. And for 2019, you're budgeting again. Are you looking for another cruiser this year?
The cruiser's in the budget annually now.
Okay, so that every year we're gonna have the same amount in there?
I don't understand it. Every
Well,
year,
You budgeted for 32,000 for a new cruiser, and you got a new cruiser. This year, you're budgeting 32,000 for another cruiser for 2019. So are you gonna buy another cruiser in 2019?
our goal is to annually replace cruisers within the fleet.
Okay, on an annual basis.
Right.
And how many cruisers do you have?
We have 4 marked patrol cars and 2 unmarked.
So you look at every 6 years of purchasing one.
Basically,
keeping them in the budget.
the oldest car gets replaced every,
Okay,
so
yeah.
it just keeps going.
All right.
If you notice, since we got back on track and started doing that, our maintenance budget was cut in half. Because we have newer cars, we're not expending thousands of dollars on maintenance and repairs that we shouldn't be making. The cars were too old.
Okay, so there is a question from this side of the table. So down on the parking meter expenses for the straightener,
Yes.
the pole straightener, you do have 3250 that was approved in 2018, but 140 was expended thus far, and yet the proposed budget is increased. Is there, so, I mean, we went from just 140 expended, and we're increasing that amount.
We had planned on, before the end of the year, to expend some more additional funds to improve a little bit of items on the ATV, which the parking enforcement officer will be using instead of his own personal vehicle to gather parking meter funds.
Yeah, I think that-
So we haven't expended it yet, but actually we've talked about it today, that it had to be done.
Okay. Any other questions?
We may even buy the pole straightener if we can do that before the end of the year. If we do, that will come out of there. Animal control,
Are we still in the police department? Animal
Yeah.
control?
yeah.
I'll do it after you finish.
Well, I just want to go to animal control. This budget has not changed and has stayed the same for many years. We are looking to also pay out the portion that the town clerk wants paid out. She's splitting a cost of some type of a software that the police department will be able to look at the tags and go to the computer and look up whose dog it is. Instead of waiting and calling the town clerk and getting that information. It will be available to them immediately.
24/7.
Yeah. It's $150 for the software.
This is just for dogs, not feral cats.
She gives us printouts.
Just dogs.
They
Just
have it
dogs, not
accessible on the
feral
road,
cats.
in dispatch and have it too. She gives
Cat
us the
registration,
paper
yeah.
receipts.
I think that's gone through the legislator a couple of times to try to require cat registration.
No cat registration, no dog registration.
We're not tracking down cats.
Not
It's like
yet.
trying to
We're
herd.
trying to herd them ducks, we heard them. Question to the chief, what's the most challenging thing for your department?
Personnel.
Personnel?
It's, you know, it's an ebb and flow, and, like, right now I have, 2 military deployments and 1 person in the academy. One's on, medical leave. So, you know, keeping, proper levels of personnel to keep the community safe. And addressing it with, you know, when we're looking to expand the community or make a community a destination location, we want to have the proper amount of people out there to provide a good service.
I noticed that active shooter line, there was 0 in it, I think. Was there active shooter training?
That's correct.
So nothing for that.
That's covered, that was initial training. Now we get ongoing training through different sources in our training line. And in the spring, we'll be doing an exercise with Homeland Security, and that'll be grant funded. So there's no need to fund that in active shooter.
We actually get a lot of training through our insurance company, both under the property liability insurance and the workers' comp. We also get some training from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Some of it's free, some of it's reduced cost. Some of it we've been sharing with other towns. We've had a couple education programs where our town wanted it and other towns also want it, and we chip together and pay the cost of it. So it's an effort of trying to work together.
And at the PD this year too, train the employees on
Oh, yeah.
active shooter training.
We had
That's
a
correct.
great active shooter training with all of our employees.
And with the school too, or?
We do the school, we do private employers, we do the municipal, we're talking about the area churches and sitting down with them and doing training with them as well.
That's really important, yeah.
Warrant articles?
I was just gonna ask, anything coming forward, a warrant article from the police department?
Not yet, there might be a proposed warrant article, but I haven't figured out the minutia of it, and I'd rather not disclose it, because I don't know if it's 100%, if the way that the individual wants to make it work, if it's legal, so I'd rather not discuss that.
So, for warrant articles, petition warrant articles, Karen, what's the deadline?
Off the top of my head, I believe the petition warrant articles is January 8th.
January 8th, okay, so we're good, all right.
The other warrant articles, we hope to have most of them wrapped up before next meeting or the meeting after that, if we have that on the schedule.
Our next meeting or the select board's next meeting?
The selectmen have to look at them first.
Yeah, we have a work session planned for, what is it, a week, or next Thursday.
Next Thursday,
to
yep.
go, so.
But we are meeting next Tuesday here? Or?
Right, we do have the highway department
Yep.
to go through. We do also have Channel 2 that we rescheduled them tonight to go because we were running late. So they're gonna come next Tuesday. There might be one more agency that's coming. And then I think, do you wanna if we have time, the warrant articles that you are aware of? Do you wanna do that?
yeah.
What else is there that we need to get into the budget? And we also, thank you, Paul, I don't wanna keep you here, but,
Is there any other departments that you want to see? Because I can try to get them in next
I
week.
kind of went through and I thought, we've hit most of them, haven't we?
And you guys don't have any other questions?
I don't think so at this time. You're
I can
lucky.
come back if you do, or you can contact me directly.
Yeah.
And thank you for the question, Mel. But realistically, the town's been very gracious the past few years in providing us with additional people, and we appreciate it. But our job's about people. It's about being with people and having people out there. So.
All right, I thought I had it. I don't know what I did with it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, and for us, Thursday, day after
Thursday's
tomorrow,
on, yeah.
LHS cafeteria, 4 p.m.
If you have any
Have we
questions,
heard anything from the community house itself? Are they gonna be presenting?
they're gonna come the first Tuesday, so that'll be next Tuesday. Yeah. So I will pull this all together and get it to you so we can figure out what we're actually covering and not schedule too much for one.
Definitely the highway department.
Yeah.
That's the next biggest department. Then if there was any other small departments, I can help you as much as I can.
If you have any questions,
Generally more than adequate, but yes.
get them to us so we can get it to them. Any follow-up questions that you may have for any department that's been presented. So I'm thinking the next 3 Tuesdays, we will be meeting with the town. There will be one time, and I don't know, you can advise us on how you would like to see this happen. We're gonna have to sit down with the school and the town together because looking at everything all together, it's quite substantial, don't you think? Don't you think we should all sit down?
Absolutely.
I don't want to be pulling this off just with my own thoughts. Just because sometimes there's give and take and sometimes there's creative thinking here to try to, the combined amount is staggering. No other way to put it.
No, and it's important that Andrew and Steve and the selectmen and the school board obviously kind of have a face to
So
face on.
could you get in touch with the superintendent and see what date that could possibly be? I would appreciate that. That would be great. And I've already talked to Skylar about it and he's on board. Just whenever we can set it up, so.
And anyone that was not here last week, I have the draft
Yeah.
revised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll need a copy.
Okay, all right.
Also, last time, you asked about a MS1 kind of comparison of values and
Yeah.
how values have changed. Yep. And so, I didn't bring handouts, I was trying to do something really quick before I came.
That'll
over.
come next Tuesday.
Yeah, I could go over the basics for you real
Yeah.
quick if you like.
Well,
You wanna wait?
could you,
Yeah.
I think we can just look at it at the end
Yeah,
of it.
sure.
It's
Okay.
not looking, but it was insightful last year, and I think it's just nice to see those numbers laid out, so if you don't mind, just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
not that I wanna hear you talk.
Oh,
but-
no, that's okay. I'll hand it off to
Yeah.
you. Yep.
So I think that's it, right?
Okay.
But any questions you have for the school, if you want to forward that to me, so at least they would have time to prepare a little bit for that, that would be helpful. And I will talk to you about the question you had.
Okay.
So,
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Contract facilities, those wage numbers will change.
They won't change in the budget, though.